Welcome. So glad you could be here with us. Please find a comfortable seat if it's a bolster, or you can also sit up on an ottoman if that's more comfortable. And maybe you've got music going, maybe you want to light incense. Think about what would just make this a really great yoga zone for you. We're going to be starting seated because we're going to actually talk a little bit about attention, placing our attention, options of where we can place it. So if you would come to seated and then close your eyes, please, and just turn them up and in. So it's as if you're trying to see behind that kind of center of the forehead and above the eyebrows, third eye point. Direct your attention inside and observe what's there. Is it totally dark? Do you see points of light? Is there color? And then I'm going to ask you to direct kind of your inner listening to the breath. And perhaps you can already even hear your breath very gently and quietly in the body. We'll be creating breath that makes more sound in our practice as well. But for now, just get curious. Can you hear or sense the breath with your inner awareness? I'm going to have you now, just for one breath round, plug your ears. Good. Now, we're going to add ujjayi breath. And so this is called great sounding breath. It sounds like ocean waves or wind in the trees. So contract your throat a little bit. And as the breath passes through, it should make kind of a sound, but with the mouth closed. And we do that by creating this throat valve. And if that throat valve is just really awkward or something at some point, you let it go. But ujjayi breath to me is one of the foundational elements for breath practice in yoga, and particularly for helping maintain attention in my practice, particularly maintaining my attention in my body when it wants to fly out all over, perhaps to the past, the future, or in the space that I'm in. So now, as you've got that ujjayi going, and it'll be easier to feel and hear on the exhale. The inhale, it's going to be a little softer. It's a little more challenging to get good at bringing the breath through that in valve. And again, if later this is just too much, you can let it go. But for now, let's really focus on it. And I'm going to ask you to once again plug your ears. And notice what that's like for you. You may have been practicing ujjayi for a really long time, so it's perhaps not strange, but it's wonderful to get back in touch with it and see if you can even get more refined with that throat valve, where it becomes just steadier, kind of a more developed muscle, if you will, or intelligence. I also want to talk about our visual focus. I had you turn it up and in earlier. But in a lot of our yoga practice, we have our eyes open, or we can have them open. And sometimes we just want to develop a drishti gaze on a general point of focus. So if I'm seated, I might have my drishti gaze, as we call it, sort of a few feet in front of me on the floor or kind of low on the wall. Just a very kind of calm arrangement for the eyes. When we're in downward facing dog, I might invite you to place it between your feet, for example. When we're in our mudra, like our prayer hands, Anjali mudra, we might place our drishti gaze right over the tips of the fingers. And so I'm hoping you're kind of playing with some of this. So drishti gaze is basically a soft visual focus. It's not darting around trying to look at anything specific. It's almost like a daydream with the eyes open, so that you're not really looking at anything. And all of your attention, therefore, is actually available for inside. So if breath focus, breath attention is challenging for you, it's almost always going to be easier to close those eyes for a few moments to find that breath. Over these next few minutes, as we're playing with breath attention, I invite you to play with closing the eyes and trying to see or imagine where the breath is in the body, and opening the eyes in a soft drishti gaze, and then still trying to listen or see inward for the breath. Okay. One more point of attention that can help us be present in this moment. Take the tip of the tongue, place it lightly at the roof of the mouth behind the front teeth. This says, I'm awake. I'm here in my practice, in this moment, this body, this breath. If it's comfortable, come into your ujjayi breath, little throat valve, and begin to observe breath moving in the body. The inhale rising, asking, is there more? Noticing where it's stretching you and touching you, finding the gap or pause before you notice then the exhale. And we're going to continue this way for a number of rounds. And I invite you to play again with the eyes closed, turned up and in, eyes open, drishti gaze. Always observing, watching the breath. Notice if your mind wanders away from breath attention, simply bring it back. Notice if the mind has wandered and return it again. Now, please note that yoga, our physical practice that we're going to be coming into here, is actually a great preparation for meditation. So it can be very difficult to focus in the way that I'm asking you to. If you haven't been moving your body, shaking out your yayas, or what have you. So just notice that, and when we return at the end of practice to breath attention, just notice if it becomes easier. I'm going to have you seated still if it's comfortable, and remember you can always extend those legs out in a straddle if your knees or hips would prefer it, or even sit up on an ottoman. But we're going to add our Sufi grind, it's called. And so it's a rotation of the ribs. And we're going to start counterclockwise. So as you're ready, you might inhale and press the ribs forward, and then go to your left, and then exhaling, rounding backward. And moving to the right, arriving, inhaling front. And you can really match the breath with this however you like. So if you're wanting to do faster movements but keep the breath slow, of course you can do that. Otherwise, here, first thing on your mat, it's really nice to go slow and kind of notice, what's in my spine? Am I feeling any little pulls along the hip bones? Can I open my heart space forward? And one way to help with that is kind of the shoulder blade sandwich that we talk about, sort of squeezing the shoulder blades as you reach forward through your heart. Getting more inhale to stretch you. And on the exhale, creating kind of that cat back where you spread the shoulder blades away from one another. Good, just a couple more this direction, counterclockwise, your own pace, breath attention. And the next time you are forward, pause for your inhale. Nice little arch in the back. And begin going to the right, clockwise. So it's kind of fun. We like to think about counterclockwise as an unwinding sequence, and clockwise as a kind of building or winding sequence. So if there's any kind of intention or goal that you're trying to formulate or strengthen, you might hold that in your mind's eye, right up at that third eye that we've placed our visual attention if your eyes are closed. Just a couple more this direction. I'm going to add one more point of awareness here, which is just your hands. Are you able to bring your index finger and thumbs together as you have your hands on the knees or the thighs? And just notice that can be a nice connection point, another way of steadying our awareness, our electrical circuits. Last round. Pausing forward. On your exhale, please just move into a cat back here, seated. Round deeply and hold. Letting your head hang, and notice what's in your neck today as you start your practice. And then inhaling, arch forward into our little cow back. And breathing here, holding and noticing the inhale where it touches you. I'm hoping that you feel a good massage right in through the front of the ribs, up into the heart space. Notice if that area is tight. Have you been in stress, either a single event of stress or just kind of perpetual low-grade stress can create so much tightness here. Love it up with your breath. One more. Is there more? And exhaling, come to neutral. Pause here to please notice what is neutral. We'll be trying to find our neutral spine again and again in seated, standing, table, etc. So right here to practice rooting down through the sits bones, rising up through the crown, which is a little behind that center of the head. So observe, did you reach through your chin? If so, you'll probably be feeling some tension at the base of the skull and kind of upper neck. Bring that chin down and subtly back towards the base of the skull. And my hope is that you feel strongly, but also peacefully upright. When you are ready, you can remove your object of support and come to your back body. We're going to start off with our feet directly below the knees here, preparing for bridge pose. And before you go anywhere, just notice what this feels like. I could all of a sudden feel like a nice relaxation through my low back, just being allowed to lay down flat like this. I'm going to invite you to anchor your upper arms tight to your rib cage down into the floor. And before we come into bridge, I want you to do a few experimental pulses of powering down through the upper arms, but remaining soft in the neck. What do you notice? Let's try that again. We'll inhale and relax. Big belly breath. Exhale and engage down through the upper arms. Try not to use the head. Good. One more. Again, your eyes might be open in a soft drishti gaze on the ceiling, or closed, seeing inward. Good. Let's take one more long inhale. Exhale, belly to spine, and use that as your impetus to then press the hips up into your bridge pose. Pause. Please observe, are you taking on a bunch of tension in your neck? If so, see if you can bring your shoulder heads more closely towards each other beneath you. How about the pressure in your feet? Can you check that it's full footbed, and particularly that inner footbed, so that you can feel those inner thighs squeezing as if you had an object there? Good. Take one more long breath, the longest you've ever taken in bridge pose, raising the ribs up and back towards your face. Exhaling, come down as slowly as you can, one rib at a time. Lovely. Bring knees to belly. And this is such a simple pose and shape, of course. It's a wonderful way to decompress the spine, especially if during our practice, we're doing forward fold or ragdoll, and you're like, oh, that just doesn't feel good to me. This is a really nice place to come. Let's widen the knees out for happy baby, and you could slide those hands perhaps to the shins or ankles or all the way to the feet, or you could even grab a strap and put it across the soles of the feet. Either way, I'm going to ask you in your first version of this pose that you've just created to observe the body. Are your shoulders hiking up? If so, anchor them down and kind of wing your elbows in towards the upper legs. Notice how that puts you more powerfully into your core and not your neck and shoulder girdle. Can you draw the knees more deeply down by your ribs? Can you tilt the tailbone towards the floor? And what happens with breath attention here? Noticing where it touches and stretches you. It should move the body. You should feel a little like a balloon kind of expanding and deflating, or an object bobbing on the waves. If you can't feel any movement, either your breath is not going to its full extent, ask, is there more? Or you're just holding the pose so tightly you won't let it respond to breath. Throughout our practice today, please make this a priority, letting the breath move the body. I'm going to now bring those feet together in butterfly right here at the butt. This is an active butterfly to which you might add a sit-up, maybe a little windshield wiper, one foot towards the nose. Or if that's uncomfortable, you can place the feet on the floor for a more passive or relaxed butterfly pose. Good, another deep breath. Imagine that you're directing it down into the pelvic girdle, expanding the hips from the inside. And then releasing the feet for bridge pose one more time. We're going to add our leg extensions, or if that's too much, remember to just do a foot hover. So bringing the hips up, and they don't have to be all the way up. They don't have to be in your most vigorous bridge pose to get this benefit. But do add that little shoulder blade squeeze underneath so the neck is in ease, kind of lift the chin. And if this is difficult, again, the closer your feet are together, the easier it'll be to lift one foot and then the other. Or if that's even too much, some days maybe you've got a really sore back from something you were doing this week, then you can just reduce weight in one foot and then the other. Otherwise, full leg extension, holding and breathing long enough in each side so that you can observe. Are the sides equal? And then you can also wake up any sleepy muscles to say, hold me together. One more deep breath. And coming slowly, slowly down. We're going to bring the right knee into the belly, release wind pose. Left leg vigorously extended. Really flex through that heel so firmly that it almost lifts the foot off of the floor a little bit, and the calf still on the floor. That's how you know you've got a really good flexion down there. Deep breath, belly towards thigh. And you might wiggle that knee a little right and left. I'm going to offer a spinal twist here. If your back is already a little tight or sore this morning, I would recommend embryo pose. Otherwise, you're just going to cross that right knee over to the left and reach that right arm out behind. Embryo pose is where we would have both legs together. That always anchors the low back, gives it a little extra safety and support. We always want the body to feel safe so that as we approach our edge, it knows that it can let go of stored tension, the stuff that we just don't need. So what's in your back, arm, shoulder? I'm hoping you're playing with it, that you're reaching it up by the ear and maybe back out to behind you or even down by your hip or in a circle. Pause in whatever version feels just really good, and we're going to observe the movement of 3 breaths in and out, letting it bob the body. Now this is challenging in a twist because the shape itself resists full breath. So you've got to be willful. You've got to like intend to move breath past the resistance. You might add a sighing exhale. It can feel marvelous. Watching for the gap, the pause. One more. Is there more? Is there more? Good. And coming back to center. Hug those knees a moment. Rock a little side to side, whatever feels good. And then release wind on the other side. Left knee in, right leg extended, vigorously flexing through the heels. And that right one, if you vigorously flex, you should feel the heel kind of come off the floor. Good. Deep belly breath towards the thigh. Shoulder heads are anchored, elbows in. Same as when we were doing happy baby. So the neck is as relaxed as possible. You might even have a soft smile on your face. The tongue is soft, maybe just the tip of it, roof of the mouth. And as you're ready, crossing for your spinal twist, whichever version you'd like to be using here. If you can keep the extended leg foot flexed, that creates, again, nice stability for the body. Begin playing with that back arm, with the movement of the head. And as you're breathing, remember, you're massaging your whole spine with breath, from way down in the tailbone to all the way up inside of your skull is where the upper end of the spine resides. Find your best shape, whatever feels good, and apply 3 breaths of deep awareness here. Is there more? And you might be sighing, exhale, or just slowly exhaling through the nose. Your eyes might be open, internal gaze, or drishti gaze open. Last round. And slowly back to center. Again, knees together, nice little rocking. And if throughout our practice, any time you feel any lower back kind of tension or stress, remember that bridge pose, just pressing into this one more time, can be a really great way to balance out all of that front back body work. Maybe you'd like to add yoga mudra. That's that intertwining of the fingers here behind the back. As you take a breath here, make it deep and observe. Where do you feel it? Slowly, slowly down. Marvelous. We're going to come actually onto our hands and knees. So however you would like to get there, you can spinal rock up to cross-legged and then roll forward. I'm going to ask you to place your attention for a moment on your hands, and I want you to practice getting intelligent hand position. So it's middle finger forward, other fingers wide, and see if you can really feel the power in the base of the index finger and the thumb. And then I'm going to ask you to imagine you're kind of tractioning, kind of pulling on your mat, like I wanted to pull my hands closer to my knees, but I'm not going to move them. Good, and then I want you to actually push on your mat, like you're trying to push your hands away or make your mat longer. Good, I'm gonna ask you to do that one more time. Make sure you're breathing, a nice long inhale perhaps, and then exhaling, traction your hands towards the knees. Stay soft in the neck. Nice inhale, exhale, traction the hands away from the knees. Awesome. And so this ability to traction, we're going to take this into an amazing shoulder release, but that is actually also powerful for releasing all around the rib cage, which is a big part of our breath apparatus. So I'm going to have you come down onto your left forearm, and I want you to place it just a little more towards center from where it was. I'm going to stay on my right hand, and I'm going to ask you to get into your core, so just like you do in cat back. And I'd like you to traction that left forearm down and towards your knees. Good. Take a nice long inhale. Keep tractioning. And as you're still tractioning, exhaling, slowly sit your butt back towards your knees. It doesn't have to get there. Good. When you feel like you've reached the extent of your best stretch that's available, inhale, come on back. We're going to do this twice more on this side. Exhaling, tractioning down and back with the forearm, slowly taking the butt back. And my hope is that at some point in this, you feel a stretch through the rib cage, the armpit. You might be feeling it through the deltoid. I like to pause kind of right at my end and let my head just hang and get an extra little stretch with gravity one last time. Inhaling to your neutral. Exhaling, tractioning down and back with the forearm as you slowly sit back. And notice what you've found this third time. Usually by that point, I can feel the stretch go like a little deeper or farther along. I hope you're getting this. All right, we're going to come to the other side. I'm going to place my right forearm, and I'm going to place it a little more towards center if I can. Obviously, if you feel any kind of twinging or pull like that, you're going to want to back off or just do like standard puppy stretch instead of this. So anchoring down and towards the knees, big inhale. Exhaling, pressing the pelvis back, butt towards the heels. Until you sense the end of your stretch, then inhale, return. Exhaling, traction, sitting slowly back, keep tractioning. Like I can feel this making me quiver a little bit, the effort to traction combined with the stretch, so that's not abnormal. Good, one more, especially if you've got a lot of tension in there. Tractioning, breathing, noticing, and again, just sort of at some point settle in and enjoy the stretch that comes with gravity here. Good. Round that back to please come into table, and we'll do a little cow to cat to downward facing dog. So as you're in cow and cat, again, use this as a moment to first choose your open or closed gaze, and then to watch the breath in these shapes. Generally, we inhale cow, where we're arching the heart forward, and we exhale cat, where we're taking the back to the sky. But if you've never tried it, you might want to reverse it. It can be really interesting. So you would inhale cat back. Notice where that stretch arrives, and exhale cow pose in that little back arch. So notice if your body loves one or the other. It is easier to go into downward facing dog on an exhale cat back because we get all that nice core engagement. I also want you to bring your attention to that L shape of the index finger thumb anchoring. And so as you press up and back, see if you can take it from that foundation or root. Settle now your gaze between the feet. Soft drishti gaze, not looking at whatever's maybe behind you, but just finding that visual point between the feet.
Watching the breath here. Observing the anchoring point of the hands. Good. And you might be pedaling, playing. Remember, please, this is your practice, and anytime your body asks for some sort of organic movement addition or other version, go for it. Let's find one more breath here. And then settling the knees to the outside for child's pose and bringing the butt all the way to the heels. If this pose doesn't work for your knees, then you would want to settle instead in your rag doll. So in this pose, our belly is a little bit kind of squished. So we might notice that breath moves more powerfully into the back. See if you can feel that. Asking of the breath, is there more? And I'm going to take us into puppy today, which I'm hoping will feel uniquely good after that shoulder release that we did. So starting with your hips a little behind the knees is going to be safer. You can always scooch and go deeper if your shoulders want that. And you're just going to slowly walk those hands down. I always feel like a cat or something getting into this pose. And ideally, we'd rest our forehead on the floor. Remember, you can have your hands wider than the shoulders. If that creates neck ease, please go for it. Let your body bob on the waves of your breath. And if you're wanting a little more intensity, you can scooch a little forward with the shoulders or the hands. Please don't come forward hips of knees. It's not going to create a great stretch, and it puts your spine at a little bit of risk as well as your shoulder joints. So we're going to add a little stretch here. When you're ready, I want you to kind of look under your left armpit a little bit, and so you're sending your right armpit towards the floor. Hold, breathe. And as you're ready, switch. Look under your right armpit, sending your left armpit towards the floor. The more you kind of press the pelvis back, the more intense stretch you'll get. And release on up. Good. We're going to come all the way to our bellies. And I'm actually going to invite you to briefly do a little yoga mudra here. So you're going to intertwine the fingers behind the back. If this just doesn't work for you, it bothers you or something, then you might want to just hang out and explore some cobra. We'll be doing jet airplane in a moment. Intertwine those hands, resting on the forehead. Rotate the shoulder heads down the back. So it's like you're circling them backwards. And then press the fists towards the feet. And just see if it feels natural to move this pose with breath. So inhaling, anchor the pelvis, and press the fists back, letting the heart come off the mat a little bit. Exhaling, return. This does not have to be a big movement to be useful. Inhaling again, extending, pressing fists back. I find if I try to make it a bigger movement, often I end up taking on back tension or something that just really is not a benefit. And release. Turn your head to the side. What do you notice in your body? I can feel some tingling in my hands after that. All right, we're going to rotate the fingertips down, tented fingertips. And I want to have my hands tented, as I say, like I'm holding a softball against the floor. And so my elbows are straight, my shoulder heads are down. And I'm going to squeeze my upper arms a little in towards the ribs, which will really get my triceps fired up. Power down through the pelvis. You should really feel that glute ignition. And then as you're ready, join me in a few breaths, finding your version of jet airplane arms here. Maybe the hands are reaching off the floor only. Maybe you're also releasing the head to reach towards the wall in front of you. Remember, you're not looking. You're pressing through the crown. And maybe you even want to extend the legs. If it bothers your back, re-anchor them. And make sure that your feet are not turning out, that your thigh bones are facing the floor. Let's do one more big breath. And release. Turn your head to the other side and relax the arms. Big belly breath into the back. And remember, you can always go to child's pose anytime if that low back asks for that. We're going to be coming directly into one of our favorite poses, forearm plank. And this is a great pose for getting to notice, are you able to create power without taking on, say, tension through the neck, the shoulders, the low back? That's really where we want to arrive at. So let's really watch that carefully. I'm going to start with my left hand in a fist, my right hand covering it, or vice versa. I find that just to be the most comfortable position for the hands and the arms. And before I try to create the pose, I want to check two really important things. Shoulder heads are anchored down, and then I'm anchoring through the butt cheeks, pubic bone and hip bones. I'm going to start off with knee down, forearm plank. We're going to do a few rounds, so you might join me in starting a little slow, see how it feels. And when you're ready, exhaling, just push with the arms to get the body off the floor. So what I've found is that I can do a lot of work in knee down, forearm plank. I'm actually quivering right here. I can also bring my elbows slightly forward. And I mean just slightly. You don't want them in front of the shoulders. You don't want to feel any low back discomfort. Can you breathe here? Let's do one more. And release. Remember, you can press to child's pose. You can also maybe bend the knees and kind of windshield wiper them side to side. Yeah. We're going to return to forearm plank. And so you could do it again on knees, or you could come with the balls of the feet onto the floor, and we're going to be then flexing firmly. And this is really important. If there's any bend in the knee, or if your heels are rotating out at all, you're going to feel weak. So make sure you're like imagining you're squeezing something between your thighs as you press up into your forearm plank. Can you find 3 full breaths here? Light tip of the tongue connecting, ujjayi breath if that's comfortable, soft drishti gaze, either right on the yoga mat or you can turn it inward. Good. One more deep breath. And release. Relax. Notice. Here again, as the belly is against the mat, notice that there's an invitation for breath in the low back. It can feel so good. Okay, so I would love you to either repeat one of those, knee down or regular plank, if those felt like you could barely manage it. You're like, okay, that was plenty. Or if you would like to come into a little bit of side arm plank with me, I'm going to try it forearm down because that's a nice way to avoid using the wrist but getting some of that same core effort. So I'm going to come onto the balls of my feet like I just did. I'm going to walk my feet together. And then I'm going to release my left hand so that I can support as I move onto the outside of my right foot, stacking my left foot on top. So you're just allowing your left side of your body to open to the sky. And you might just hang out here with that left hand still supporting, or you could bring it to your hip. You might face it towards the sky. I often look down at the mat because it's easier on my neck. See if you can hold for 2 more breaths, getting your waistline a little higher. You're pushing off with the forearm, making sure that right shoulder is anchored as you do so. And then you can just release by lowering the hips. Come onto your belly, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. Come into your forearm plank. Walk those feet nice and close. Release the right hand for support and stability. Stack the feet. Make sure that left shoulder is anchored, and raise that left waistline towards the sky. Breathing, even inside of intensity. One more. press back to child's pose. As you go to child's pose, anchor those butt cheeks to get there. It makes for safe delivery. Again, you could be in ragdoll as an alternate. We're going to come onto our feet. So however you'd like, you might go to downward facing dog and then walk those hands back or whatever feels good. And we might want to grab a sip of water or tea or something, stay well hydrated. We're going to be doing a little warrior lunging, really warming up the lower body. And I just want to remind you that you don't have to go deep for this to work. So if it bothers your knees, but that generally the deeper or wider your stance, the better it feels if your body can receive that. I want you to just start off with hands on your hips, please, to be able to focus your attention on getting that lower body really awake and kind of grounded and stable. So we're just going to take that right knee up, standing crane. Hold for a full breath, anchoring through the inner line of that left foot. As you exhale and step back into crescent lunge on the ball of that right foot, focus on keeping the hip bones straight forward. And then once you're there, check it out. Steer the right hip bone forward, left hip bone back. And I want you to kind of just bounce a little. And my hope is you feel really stable with those inner thighs squeezing towards each other. Now look down, check that your left thigh bone is straight forward, not in or crossing the center line, and not out. And that's how you know you've got it. You might even be able to kind of hop in place, all right? Take a nice long inhale, reach those arms up, reach back through that back heel, exhaling, forward fold, front of the mat. I almost always go into ragdoll, knees bent. No intense need to straighten those legs. Inhaling, drop the butt, root and rise up. Bring those palms together. Maybe send your vision to witness their connection. Prayer hands. Please find your drishti gaze looking out over the fingers of your prayer hands. Notice breath and heart rate. And as you're ready, raising that left knee, standing crane. Re-anchor through that floor foot. Find that inner thigh connection here and maintain that inner thigh attention as you step back. Ball of the back foot. Steer those hip bones. Check your own thigh bone alignment. Imagine that squeeze. Maybe hop. And as you're ready, inhale. Reach up through the arms, forward through the heart, back through the heel. And exhaling, fold. Let breath move your body. Inhale, root and rise. We always drop the butt to do that. Get a nice straight spine so that our legs are the elevators that bring us up. Exhaling, prayer hands. Resolve at the heart. Drishti gaze. And we're going to do that little series again. Inhaling, right knee lifts, standing crane. Soft gaze, attention on breath and inner thigh squeeze. And slowly reaching back, crescent lunge. Inhale, reach up and hold. Notice a couple or 3 breaths in this shape. Keeping the core connected, so talk to those lower abdominal muscles. Keep those inner thighs. One more. Maybe you'd like to reach the vision up for a balance challenge if it doesn't bother your head. Exhaling, ragdoll. Can you exhale and deepen your core connection, belly towards spine, folding, folding, folding. On an inhale, root and rise. Is there more? Exhaling, prayer hands.
Left knee lifts, standing crane. Inner thigh squeeze. Exhaling, step back, crescent lunge. Express yourself here. Remember, when we go arms up, they don't have to be straight up or tight by your ears. You can widen them out. Give your neck a little more freedom. Breathing in the pose. And so even though we're in kind of a reaching our heart forward, we don't want to be in a big arch in the low back. There's all that nice low belly connection. One more long inhale, reaching up through heart and head. Exhaling, forward fold, ragdoll. Go ahead and hold it here a moment and just sort of sweep the area around the legs, kind of hinging and rotating at the hips. Lovely. And we're going to come into downward facing dog here. So I'm going to have you first bring your hands onto your shins and rise halfway up. Inhaling, sometimes we call this jackknife or half extension. And then exhaling, you're going to step back for downward dog. Now, if this does not work for you to get here this way, go back to cow-cat and join us that way. Otherwise, you're going to step back or jump back and settle in downward facing dog. Drishti gaze between the feet. 3 full breaths. As you're here, I ask you to notice shoulder heads anchoring out and away from the ears, down your back body towards your hips. Core supporting and drawing your pelvis up and back. One more. Marvelous. We're going to drop the knees right here. So I want them behind the hips. I don't want to be in table. And then I want to sort of check, I'm in basically a knee down plank, right? And I want to check that as I come forward, that my shoulders are directly over the hands, that my pelvis is tucked, or my pubic bone is a little tucked, so that I'm in spine neutral and really great core. If you're swagging, if your hips are down, you're done. Or if you've got what I call sassy bottom and your back is arched like this, you're also going to feel weak, and we don't want that because you're strong. We just got to find that right architecture. Use it. Good. Now, if this is bugging the heck out of your wrist, go onto your forearms. Otherwise, we're going to play with a little mini chaturanga here, okay? And you'll be surprised what good a work it is. Big inhale. And as you're ready, exhale. Anchor those elbows in towards the ribs and just bend them slightly, like an inch. And straighten. Nice. Again, inhale. Exhale. Bend the elbows and straighten. One more time. Bend the elbows in towards the ribs and straighten. Good. Sit back or whatever you'd like to do. Give those wrists a little release, a little love up, as I like to think of it. We ask a lot of them in yoga, but in the long run, they get stronger. They're less likely to break or be strained if we fall and need to use them to catch ourselves. So this is great strengthening, but you never want to take it too far, too much at a time. All right, we're going to come into pigeon pose. And this is a favorite hip stretch. I want to remind people of options. So I'm going to be talking that through, but if you've got your favorite, go there, okay? Our classic pigeon, we would just bring our right knee behind the right wrist and then try and settle our hip bones facing the floor. If this is the version that's most likely to bother knees. So a lot of times people don't love our classic version, and you can settle the head on the floor or stack your fists or use a block. Another version that I really like is you bring that knee forward like we just did, but you rock out onto your right butt or hip there, and you can see my back leg is bent. There's no intent to straighten it. Come on down to the right forearm, and I'm going to take my left hand to grab my foot there, flexing the foot because that stabilizes the knee. I'm going to see if I can bring it forward so the shin bone is parallel to the front of the mat. And you may have to adjust your right forearm, or you could even be on your right hand out to the outside of your mat for this to work, because you're going to be using that when you're ready on an exhale. Big inhale, powerful exhale.
Send your torso towards your foot, towards that right foot, or even towards your calf. So you're going to the left and down to find the stretch into that right hip, butt cheek, piriformis area. Some people will also feel this on like the hamstring, IT bands. So if you're feeling it other places too, fine, as long as it's not a pull in your knee or hip joints that just are like, not good. The other version that I know most of my crew are familiar with is that back body pigeon alternate where you're crossing right ankle to left thigh and you're rotating a little left, right? So we do that one a lot. So today I want to introduce you to this other alternate. It's kind of fun when you're kind of doing dog series or you're already facing the floor to do this one. When you're ready to come out, a couple easy things, sometimes just rocking out onto your onto your butt, and that'll release the pose. Otherwise, just kind of press back up if you can come almost into a push-up and release that leg. Bring the left knee towards the left wrist, or if you're on your back, you're crossing the ankle into your right knee. And you're either coming into your classic pigeon. And I'm, of course, describing all these, but I hope you're finding the one that works for you and you're really breathing and attending to that version of the pose and what's happening in your body. So if you're doing this alternate with me, you're rocking out onto your left butt. I'm on my left hand or forearm, whatever feels useful. I'm going to take a hold of my left foot with my right hand. That's really the only ones that are available. They get to meet. Shin bone parallel with the front of the mat or something like that. And as you're ready, big inhale, exhale, draw the torso to the right and towards the floor. Pulse it with breath. Use your core. Be willing to move towards the edge. The edge is where there's some intensity. We can feel old tension. We're like, oh yeah, it's like a good deep massage. Is this side different? And so whenever you feel complete with your version of the pose, come on out. Again, if you're in this kind of alternate one I've been talking about, if you can come onto your butt, or you can just bring that front heel back in towards you, return to your hands, and release into a downward dog or table. That's where we're going to meet, all in downward facing dog. And remember, when we're doing stuff on our hands, there's always a standing version too. If it's just too much for you today, you can do some standing hip pump or cow-cat with your hands on your knees, right? We're going to do some pumping here. And I'm going to invite you in either upward dog to downward dog or dropping your knees. And you can always move back to child's pose as well. So if you want to do a knee down version, drop those knees, relax the feet. Inhale, heart forward, shoulder heads anchoring down, glutes are engaged. Either exhaling back child's pose or downward facing dog. Good. Doing that again, if you want to do it on the feet instead, stay on the balls of the feet. Squeeze those inner thighs and make sure the thigh bones are moving towards the sky. Upward facing dog, hips are suspended. Exhaling, downward facing dog. Drishti gaze between the feet. Let's do that again. One more time, asking of the breath. Is there more? Is there more? And we're going to come to standing. So you might walk your hands back to your feet, hang out and forward fold a little bit. There's a nice wrist release that you can do by lifting your foot and placing your hand underneath, palm facing the sole of the foot. And just pressing the hips to the sky a little bit. Inhaling, root and rise, drop the butt. Prayer hands, witness them connecting. And at your heart space. Please do a little body scan, taking your attention from one end to the other, noticing what's present. So we're going going to do a little playing with our shoulders. We've done some already really good openings, so hopefully they're already really nice and warmed up. But this is another amazing stretch that I've found for, it's not really just about shoulders, it's about everything down into our wrists and so on, especially people if you get tennis elbow, stuff like that. So just standing, but comfortably, you know, nice kind of athletic stance. And I want you to simply rotate your right palm up and look out over it. And then imagine you're trying to rotate your left palm down and then back. Good. And now reverse. Look out over your left hand, letting it rotate open to the sky. Right palm is rotating front of you and then back and then up. So it's, hopefully this is going to just make sense in your body because it's a lot of words, but reversing. Another way to think about it is that one shoulder head, my back one, is internally rotating, so in other weights towards my chest, and my other one is externally rotating. The shoulder head is anchoring down the back of the body. Do that a couple more times, and as you do it and you hold briefly in each, think about reaching your fingers for the wall. All right, let's do one more each way. And then just release the arms by your sides. You might close the eyes, gaze up and in, and just observe. Maybe you're inspired to do some, wrist rolling. Maybe your neck would like a little release. You can put the collar around the neck like we like to do and kind of roll the head a little bit. So we're going to go sideways on our mat in our straddle pose. And we're going to bring our kind of theme of attention and of noticing to this because it's interesting, but we rarely think about our hands or feet in daily life. And in yoga, we give them a lot of attention, and for good reason. But we also have habits that we don't even know we have. So I want you to just check first your feet in straddle and notice if you might be rotating or kind of pushing to the outside of the foot. And one way you would know that is you would see kind of your toes sort of curl a little bit in towards each other. So see if you can instead anchor your big toe and the ball of the big toe, and then spread the other toes out. And my hope is that, your foot looks like our intelligent hand position, really flat and wide. And then notice how strong that feels, how rooted. And if you're not sure, let's give it up and let our ankles just go out and our weight go to the outer foot. And I'm hoping you can feel how awkward that is, and it puts pressure on the knee, and I'm not using any of these muscles that are a big part of my stability. So go ahead and find that inner anchoring again. Spread those toes. And we're going to go side to side now. And for the first few rounds, just keep your hands on your hips and look at your feet so that you can notice that you're not giving up your foundation. You're not pushing to the outside, right? And remember, you can go as low as you want to as we get into this, or you can just stay up nice and high like this. It's great work. You can also add a reach across. So as I do that, I want to think about where that power is coming from. The power is coming from the foot that I'm reaching away from. So do it nice and slow a moment. Feel your long line. Is it easier to feel on one side than another in your body? And you might start playing with angles, taking that reach across lower, maybe even to the floor. You can go back up. And of course, you're breathing. The breathing does not need to match your movement in any particular way. But if you want to, and you can even speed it up. I tend to exhale on the reach in this one. It's a great way to get a little cardio, right? Who says you can't get sweaty doing yoga? Few more. Good, and then slow. Just one more each side, whatever angle. pause, reach. Other side, pause, reach. And coming to center, bent knees, fold. Invitation to walk those feet in a little bit, take some intensity off the ankles, and also if you'd like to add your yoga mudra again. Now I want to invite you to notice a couple of things. When you go, and you can do this standing, right? Like I've come up to standing and I'm going to show you that version too. But when you go to interlace your fingers, which thumb is on top? And what does it feel like to reverse and put the other thumb on top? For a lot of us, it's really awkward, which means we need it. And so, yeah, in my body, I've noticed that if I put the opposite thumb on top, I even feel like it's harder to do that pressing of the fists towards the hips and getting the arms straight. And if you can't get them straight at all, please remember to grab a hold of a scarf, a strap, even a sock potentially if it gives you enough length, so that you can straighten the arms. You can feel that shoulder blade sandwich there. And release. Whew. Nice. Go ahead and put that aside. We're going to return to the front of the mat. We're just going to do one little warrior series. And I want you to go slow with me. We're going to hold each pose for a few breaths, but putting particular attention on that sense of foundation in these feet that you've been giving your awareness to, those inner thighs, and then that sense of stability in the core, and also where your hands are reaching. So there's a lot to pay attention to. And it doesn't matter if you don't get all of it, right? It's beautiful having this much attention inward on your body, and I hope it will support you through your whole week. As you're ready, feel both feet deeply connected to the earth, breath rising and settling. Then bend the knees a little bit, keep those inner thighs engaged. Inhaling, standing crane, left knee lifts. Hold, anchor, neck is soft, hands are touching. Exhaling, step back to your crescent lunge, or if you prefer it, you can always be in warrior one with the foot flat. Find your expression of the pose. You might be in jet airplane arms, arms reaching straight out, up, or you can even enjoy some slicing as I think of it. Again, if you're doing anything upward, check if you're feeling any neck tension and bring the arms further out. Make sure those hip bones are steered. One more full breath. And exhaling, warrior two. Back foot plants, 90 degrees. Now check those thighs, externally rotating. Right thigh bone is straight forward and it should be tracking with your right foot. Give it a visual check. And then reaching from the heart out through the arms. And this can be a fun place if you want to add arm rotation. You can also enjoy looking out over that backhand. Where is your foundation here? Are your feet rooting equally? Is your position stable? Is breath moving you? Long inhale, reaching up. You can straighten the leg if it feels good. I'm always taking my vision down after that initial upward gaze. And again, letting breath move you in the pose. Feeling that length. Rooting, reaching. One more long inhale. Exhaling, flowing slowly forward like you want to present a platter with that right hand. I want you to find that length again from the back foot through the reaching hand. Then lightly place that right elbow on the thigh, or if you find you want to go deeper, taking that right hand on down to the floor or to a block. Stack that left shoulder back, shoulder heads anchored down the back. And remember that side body lift we did in side arm plank? See if you can get that going again. You might be reaching the left arm to the sky or getting a deep lateral stretch by reaching it out beyond the head. Letting breath move you. Good, and as we release, you've got the option of moving to downward facing dog and stepping back, or coming up hands to hips, returning to the ball of the back foot and stepping to your mountain pose. So just depends on how much time you want to spend on your hands or what your body is craving. You might do a little pumping up dog to down dog or standing hip pump with me here. So we're going to inhale, bring the hips back a little bit, maybe down a lot, totally up to how much thigh you want, and squeezing those glutes forward. So it's just a little movement or a lot. And let's all meet in mountain. Finding a full breath here in neutral, drishti gaze. Standing crane, right knee lifts. Inner thighs connect, creating stability, awareness of that inner line of the foot connecting. Slow journey back, crescent lunge. Steer those hip bones. Good. Find your version of arms, perhaps jet airplane, straight out, up, or maybe even slicing. Breathing. Light connection to the tip of the tongue. Ujjayi breath. Drishti gaze. One more long inhale. Exhaling, Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2. Back foot plants, 90 degrees. Check those thigh bones. Again, give it a visual take to check that your thighs straight and knees tracking with a straight foot. So even while that lower body is in so much effort, I want to find a softness in my mouth, maybe even a soft smile. Again, we can be playing with our palm direction and our head direction. One more big breath, bobbing on the waves. Inhale, reaching up through that left arm, possibly straightening the front leg. If you do, make sure you're not hyperextending it. You've got a nice squeeze of the thigh muscles towards the bone. You could even counter reach down through your right arm, and that can create some really great back activity. Remember, we want to feel long through that back rib cage, even though we're creating a bit of a side bend, so there's no collapse. And as you come forward, you're presenting that platter. So begin bending the left knee. Think about the power in that back foot and leg to send forward. Then lightly rest elbow to thigh and stack the shoulders, or if you're going deeper. But if you go down towards the floor and your butt swings out behind you, putting your thigh bone at an angle, then you definitely want to come back up. Get that alignment. Side body engagement, just like you do in side arm plank or in gate pose, same thing. I love this lateral stretch. If you really stack those shoulders, you probably can feel a nice stretch way down into the psoas, kind of deep inside of that hip bone area. One more long inhale, and then your option for release. Again, you might be rotating onto the ball of the back foot to plant the hands for downward dog. You might be coming back up, hands to hips, ball of the back foot. If you've got a really long stance, as I do, you might want to shorten it up a little bit before you try to put all the weight in that front leg and return. You can also do it in little mini steps. Last opportunity for a little spinal pumping. So you might be in dog and going into up dog, down dog, or full dog series.
You might be standing with me, coming into a little standing hip pump and really lubricating your spine for the day. You could also go into cow cat.